All right, guys. So I am of the well supported opinion that if Alex Pereira defeats Cyril Gahn at UFC Freedom 250, Alex Pereira will be the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And quite certainly a top five combat athlete of all time. Because as it stands right now, guys, if we look at Alex Pereira's accolades across Glory, across the UFC, as it stands today, he's already a top 10, top 15 combat athlete of all time. And why do I say this? Well, there's a lot of good reasoning for it. Let's start off with his absolutely elite resume. We have the likes of Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland, Jan Blachowicz at 205, Magomed Ankalaev at 205, Yuri Prohaska at 205, and much more. Some may say that Adesanya has the better win at 185 over Alex Pereira, which is true. That can be argued that Izzy has the better win at 185 over Pereira. But nonetheless, as it stands today, these two guys are 1-1 in the UFC. There isn't a single person in the UFC that has defeated Alex Pereira that Alex Pereira also doesn't have a victory over. And that applies to Magomed Ankalaev as well as Adesanya. So he has one of the best resumes we've ever seen in this entire sport, right? And I mentioned this earlier with his cross sport dominance, where he's in the Glory Hall of Fame and he's the first and only fighter in Glory to simultaneously hold titles in two different weight classes, both middleweight and light heavyweight. Not to mention that he's already in elite company. If we even exclude Pereira himself, if we're talking about double champs, he's already among the likes of John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Islam Makhachev, Conor McGregor, GSP, and so many other absolute legends of the sport, right? And honestly, one of the most, if not the most important part, he's a natural born aura maxer. No, you cannot tell me of another name in light heavyweight that has as much aura in history as Alex Pereira. Now, where does this leave us, right? If he adds Cyril Gahn to his resume, he would be the only three division champ in UFC history. This is uncharted territory. John hasn't done this. GSP hasn't done this. Mighty Mouse hasn't done this. So if Alex is able to pull this off, and I think he will, considering the fact that Alex Pereira, in my opinion, is a more talented and more technical kickboxer than Cyril Gahn. I believe Cyril Gahn is very, very talented. And I believe also that he relies a lot on his mobility. And that's where a lot of his deadliness comes from. Not necessarily from the fact that he is a, you know, kickboxer on the same level of Alex Pereira, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, Cyril Gahn is absolutely dangerous. And if we recall back to his fight against Tom Aspinall in the short minute and 30, maybe 2 minutes of fighting that we saw, he was getting the better of Aspinall for that short amount of fighting that we did see and observe from them, right? So it's not crazy to say that Cyril Gahn would beat Tom in a rematch, and that's a different video for a different day. But as things stand right now, I do believe that Alex Pereira beats Cyril Gahn when they are to fight. And as I mentioned before, this is uncharted territory. He would be the first ever three division champ in UFC history, and he would be in a class of his own. So I guess that begs the question, right? Would this make Pereira the GOAT? And my answer is undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. I don't think that there is another fighter right now that I can see that would be able to do this, not Islam, because if he goes up to 185, I do think Hamzat beats him. And I do think Sean Strickland beats him if he is to go to 185. Not that that fight would ever happen. I mean, Islam himself said that, he would have to be on the DC diet to make it, that heavy. But I don't really see another fighter doing that in the UFC. At least currently, I don't see Topuria doing that because if he goes up to 170 and faces Islam, I do favor Islam at 170. However, I do favor Ilya if the fight happens at 155. So I don't really see a fighter other than Pereira himself that would be able to make this happen. Not even Hamzat. I don't think Hamzat can really withstand the pressure that comes with being at 205. I think Yuri would give him problems. I think Ulbrich would give him problems. Anyone that can stuff the takedown and survive on the ground would give Hamzat problems. I mean, we saw that quite clearly at his last fight against Sean Strickland. So I really think the only fighter who has a shot, a reasonable, probable shot at making this happen is Alex Pereira. And for that reason, if he does this, John Jones could step aside because the new GOAT is Alex Poatan Pereira.